My mother spent years breaking me, so I buried her financially, legally, and socially. Slowly, quietly, and she still doesn't know it was me. Growing up, I thought all moms were like mine. I thought it was normal for a mother to scream at you for breathing wrong, for burning toast, for existing. I thought all kids were told things like, "I wish I never had you. You ruined my life. You're lucky I even feed you." We lived in a small town in northern Ohio, one of those places where everyone smiles too wide and asks too many questions, but nobody really sees anything. Behind our cookie-cutter front porch and manicured yard was a war zone, and the battlefield was always emotional but sometimes physical. She wasn't just cruel. She was calculated. My mother, Deborah, had this way of tearing you down with a smile on her face. She'd berate me all morning, then tell the neighbors I was going through a moody phase when they asked why I never spoke. She was a master manipulator, knew how to cry on command, always played the victim. My dad, long gone by the time I was 7. He ran off after one particularly violent night that ended with a broken lamp and a police visit that never happened. He sent cards for about a year, then disappeared entirely, and so it was just me and her. She isolated me from the world, monitored my phone, read my diary, stole birthday money and told me I was selfish for asking about it. I wasn't allowed to go to sleepovers. She called every teacher who complimented me inappropriate. If a boy liked me, I was acting like a slut. If a girl liked me, I was an embarrassment. The only thing she ever taught me was how to stay quiet, stay small, and survive. But eventually, I learned how to remember, and years later I learned how to wait. Fast forward, I escaped. Barely. I left home at 18 with nothing but a half-paid-off used car, a suitcase, and a scholarship I almost didn't get because she forgot to send in my FAFSA. I lived in a moldy dorm, worked 2 jobs, and lied to people about my family for years. Eventually, I got through college, slowly built a career in IT, moved to a real city, changed my number, changed my name on social media, kept my head down, survived. But trauma? Trauma has a funny way of hiding in the wiring. You can function, work, laugh, and still carry this quiet hum of dread that never turns off. I went to therapy, a lot of therapy, and one day, years later, something changed. My therapist looked at me and said, "You don't owe her your silence anymore." I wasn't ready to confront her directly, but I wasn't going to disappear either. Not anymore. And so I started watching. And that's when the plan began. I learned that revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's cold, surgical, strategic. Over the course of 2 years, I dismantled everything my mother used to control and define herself. Her spotless public reputation, her control over finances she'd stolen, the community image she worked so hard to protect, her ability to manipulate others through fear and charm. Piece by piece, I exposed her. And the best part? She still doesn't know it was me. Part 2. The grant that didn't exist. So, quick recap. I escaped my abusive mother, Deborah. Spent years rebuilding myself. And when I finally had my footing, I didn't explode in anger. I went cold, quiet, strategic. This is how I began dismantling the public image of a woman who abused me behind closed doors and played victim in public. Let's start with the weapon. A grant application that never really existed. Deborah's identity. Community queen. You have to understand something about Deborah. She didn't just exist in our small Ohio town. She performed. After I left, she found a new source of validation. The church. Specifically, a mid-sized, conservative evangelical church full of retirees, single moms, and families trying to one-up each other in performative righteousness. Deborah inserted herself into every bake sale, clothing drive, and prayer circle. Eventually, she launched her own charity, a local women's mentoring circle where she coached young women on building self-worth. Yes, that sentence still makes me nauseous. She wasn't doing it for money, but for status, clout, control. It gave her access to vulnerable girls, small-town media attention, and a seat at the church council. which made her extremely susceptible to outside approval, especially when it came with a little prestige. Enter the grant. Here's what I did. Using a burner email and a fake identity, I'll call her Marcy, I contacted Deborah's mentoring circle as a representative of a fictional nonprofit initiative based out of Columbus called Women Forward Ohio. I created a basic website using a paid template, slapped a logo together, bought a .org domain, and filled the pages with nonprofit buzzwords and photos from royalty-free image sites. It looked just legit enough to pass her radar. Then I sent her this. Dear Ms. Deborah, redacted. We are currently reviewing grassroots women-led organizations across the state for a pilot grant program funded by a coalition of women in tech. Your group has been nominated by a local contact, confidential, as a standout small-town initiative worthy of recognition. If selected, your organization would receive a $5,000 unrestricted grant, as well as visibility through our annual report and Women's Leadership Summit next spring. Please complete the attached application by date, including your current 501(c)(3) paperwork, a basic program budget, and a signed certification that all submitted information is accurate and verifiable. She bit instantly. Within 48 hours, she responded, full of faux humility and desperate enthusiasm. She filled out the form I created, which included a few gotcha fields I'll explain in a sec, attached her budget, and even added a scanned letter of recommendation from her church pastor. The thing is, her mentoring circle wasn't legally registered, not even as an LLC, definitely not as a 501(c)(3). She'd been taking donations through a personal Venmo account and sometimes cash only at events, which means she committed potential federal fraud the moment she claimed otherwise on the application. The gotcha fields. In the application, I included a few fields designed to bait her into lying on record. In what year did you register with the IRS as a charitable entity? She made one up. DIN, Employer Identification Number. She gave a 9-digit number that didn't match any entity in the IRS nonprofit database. Average monthly donations received. She inflated it massively, likely to look more worthy. Upload your latest IRS Form 990 or equivalent tax documentation. She attached a Google Doc, not a real tax form. I archived it all. The tip-off. 2 months later, I submitted an anonymous complaint through the IRS's Tax-Exempt Organization Complaint Referral Form, Form 13909, Ohio's Attorney General Charitable Law Division, and the Church's Regional Synod, attaching copies of her budget and application, noting potential misuse of church affiliation for financial gain. I used a different burner identity for each report to avoid links. Then I waited. For months passed. Then I started hearing from people back home, through old classmates and cousins who still lived in town. Deborah was taking a break from her mentoring group. The church newsletter vaguely mentioned an administrative review of all affiliated community outreach programs. Someone had reported her for tax violations, and she was cooperating fully. Of course, the church councilwoman resigned quietly, and some suspected she had threatened to report Deborah for years. By the end of the year, her mentoring circle was quietly shut down. The website deleted. Her name no longer appeared in church bulletins. And this is wild, her Facebook account disappeared. For someone like Deborah, that's like cutting off her oxygen. And all I had to do was let her lie on paper. Coming up next, I wasn't done yet. That was just the first of 3 blows. In part 3, I'll tell you how I used her obsession with HOA politics and neighborhood status to get her kicked off her local board, ruin her relationship with her best friend, and accidentally trigger a property audit that uncovered a decade-old insurance fraud. This is where things start getting even messier, and even sweeter. Part 3. The Fall of the Queen of the Cul-de-sac. Quick recap for those joining now. My mother, Deborah, was emotionally abusive, manipulative, and painted herself as a saint in our small Ohio town. I escaped at 18, went no contact, and spent years rebuilding. Then, quietly, strategically, I began dismantling the false empire she built. In part 1, I laid the foundation. In part 2, I baited her into committing nonprofit fraud with a fake grant application and watched her reputation unravel. But she still had one last kingdom. The cul-de-sac. Her HOA. Her suburban throne. That was next. Meet the HOA queen. After the church stuff faded, Deborah threw herself into her HOA, the tiny neighborhood council in her subdivision of about 40 homes. Think middle-aged mean girls with slightly more spreadsheets and way more passive aggression. She'd been elected president of the HOA board 3 years in a row. Why? Because no one else wanted the job, and she treated it like a second career. She ran it like a dictatorship. Enforced fines on her enemies. Let her friends break rules. Micromanaged paint colors and mailbox designs. She even created a noise log to target the teenage son of a neighbor who dared vote against her once. This was her world, her power, her stage. And I decided to take it away. Step 1, the whisper campaign. I couldn't attack Deborah directly, too obvious. But what I could do was nudge the right people into seeing what she really was. I started attending HOA meetings virtually. They had an open link posted on the neighborhood's barely updated website. No camera, no mic required. Just anonymous usernames like Concerned Neighbor 23. And I listened. Every meeting was a goldmine of pettiness. But I noticed one woman in particular, Linda H., often challenged Deborah on procedural stuff. She was polite but firm, the kind of person who reads bylaws for fun. So I created a burner Gmail under a fake name, let's say Cassandra Miller, and emailed Linda. Hi Linda, I know you don't know me, but I've been following the HOA meetings. I don't live in your community, but I used to, and I've seen Deborah do things that might be legally questionable. Have you ever looked into how she allocates HOA funds? There's a history there. Best friend. That's all it took. 3 days later, Linda called for a financial audit of the HOA's discretionary spending. She cited community concerns. Deborah was livid, tried to block it, but enough board members sided with Linda. Turns out Deborah had been approving small landscaping contracts, without multiple bids, to a business owned by a friend's nephew. Nothing huge, but enough to violate HOA policy and raise eyebrows. She was forced to step down as president pending review. First domino down. Step 2. The best friend backstab. Deborah had one loyal lapdog, her best friend, Maureen. They were inseparable: church, HOA, brunch every Sunday. So I drove a wedge. All I needed was a real secret to expose. Back in the day, Maureen's husband had been accused of minor insurance fraud. It went nowhere, but the gossip never fully died. I knew Deborah had privately called Maureen's husband a crook at church after the scandal. So I wrote another anonymous email, this time directly to Maureen. Thought you should know Deborah once told Pastor Jim you should be removed from the church finance committee because your husband can't be trusted with numbers. I figured if my best friend said that about me, I'd want to know. Up to you if you believe it. But she's not as loyal as you think. No signature. No reply. But a week later, Maureen skipped Sunday brunch. 2 weeks later, she pulled out of the HOA committee she co-chaired with Deborah. And by the end of the month, their decades-long friendship? Dead in the water. Step 3, the property audit surprise. This one was almost accidental, but beautiful. See, during the fake grant application, Part 2, I discovered Deborah had listed her house as having been renovated in 2019, new roof, finished basement, updated kitchen. But guess what? On her county property records, none of those improvements had ever been filed. Which means she wasn't paying the updated property tax rate she legally owed. So I submitted a little anonymous tip to the county assessor's office using their online form. Deborah, last name, address. Recently renovated her home, but no record of permits or updates appear in public filings. Just wanted to flag this. The neighborhood was recently reassessed and her improvements may have been missed. 3 months later, a reassessment letter shows up in her mailbox. She's hit with a retroactive tax adjustment going back 4 years, plus late fees. Thousands of dollars. Where she is now, Deborah's world has crumbled. Slowly, painfully, and perfectly. Her mentoring circle? Gone. Her church status? Quietly erased. Her best friend? Ghosted her. Her HOA reign? Over. Her finances? Strained. Her ego? Barely hanging on. She's still out there, walking her dog, forcing smiles at grocery stores, acting like she's still the queen. But I know the truth. And she knows something's wrong. She just doesn't know why it's all falling apart. She never saw the revenge coming because she never imagined I'd fight back without even being in the room. Final part. The letter she'll never forget. Everything had fallen into place. The fake grant. The church exposure. The HOA collapse. The property tax audit. Her best friend gone. Her reputation in ruins. I had dismantled her entire world. Quietly, legally, strategically, without ever having to stand in front of her again. But there was still one thing left. Not for her. For me. I didn't want her forgiveness. I didn't want closure. What I wanted, what I needed, was for her to finally see the mirror she spent her life avoiding. So I wrote her a letter. Not an email. A handwritten letter, in the same neat cursive she once mocked when I practiced as a kid. I mailed it from a P.O. box 3 states away. No return address. No name. But the handwriting? She'd know. This is what I wrote. Deborah, by the time you read this, you've probably noticed your world feels smaller, colder, less controllable. Your nonprofit failed. Your church turned. Your friends are gone. Your taxes increased. Your little kingdom of control is crumbling. And yet, no one will say why. That must terrify you. I want you to sit with that feeling. The paranoia. The isolation. The gnawing sense that someone is undoing everything you've built. Because that was my entire childhood. That's how it felt when you told me I was a burden. When you locked my bedroom door from the outside. When you read my diary and laughed. When you told teachers I was unstable. When you said I ruined your life. For years, I lived like I didn't exist unless you needed someone to blame. But I do exist. I always did. And now you'll remember that every single day. No one will believe you if you say someone is targeting you. You taught people too well how to ignore real pain. You made me invisible. So I became a ghost. And now I'm the one haunting you. I'm not sorry. Not one bit. This isn't revenge. This is consequence. Of the child you never deserved. I mailed it on a Thursday. I never got a response. I didn't want one. But 3 weeks later I got a message, not from her, but from a cousin who still lived in town. Hey, your mom's been acting weird. Real jumpy. Like she's waiting for something to happen. She told Aunt Kathy she thinks she's being punished for something but doesn't know what. Sounded kinda off. And that was all I needed. Where I am now. I live far away. Good job. Chosen family. Dog that sleeps across my legs at night. I laugh more. I breathe freely. And sometimes I still cry. Not from pain, but from the absence of it. People always say revenge doesn't heal you. They're half right. Revenge doesn't heal you. But it clears the rubble so you finally can. I didn't need to destroy her. I just needed to stop letting her live rent-free in my head. And now, she pays rent. Every single day. Thank you for reading. To every survivor who's been told to forgive, to be the bigger person, to stay quiet, let me tell you something. You don't owe your abuser redemption. You owe yourself peace. And sometimes, peace looks like silence. Other times, it looks like a well-placed mirror. And a letter she'll never forget. Thank you for stepping into another tale with me. Every story unlocks a different world. And I'm glad you were here for the journey. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my stories Unchained, where every ending is just the beginning of another adventure. Until next time, keep your mind open and your heart ready for the next story, Unchained.